UFOs in Voronezh, what really happened in 1989, and what witnesses say today. In 1989, Voronezh made headlines in many international media outlets. The local newspaper Kommuna, and later the official news agency, TASS, reported on a long-awaited contact between Earthlings and extraterrestrials who had allegedly arrived in one of the city's parks. Journalists from different countries rushed to Voronezh in pursuit of the aliens. More than 30 years have passed, yet there are still skeptics who believe the alien stories were fabricated, as well as enthusiasts who are convinced that extraterrestrials really did visit Voronezh. So who is right? This Voronezh Park is called Southern Park only on maps. For city residents, it is better known as Cozy Park, Goat Park, although no one has ever seen goats there. And park is too grand a name for what, 30 years ago, was an unkempt green patch. The park is located on Mashmet Street, in a neighborhood that is part of the same Sector Gaza, immortalized in the work of the Voronezh band of the same name. Incidentally, Sector Gaza held its first concerts nearby, at the TASS Palace of Culture, just a few stops from here. On the grass here the dew is covered with coal ash. There are no morning mists, there is only stinking smoke. Yuri Koy, leader of Sector Gaza, sang about the nature of his native land. But the ash and smoke of Mashmet were not traces of alien spacecraft landings, as one might assume, but products of large industrial enterprises whose chimneys mercilessly shrouded all of Voronezh in smoke during the 1980s. That is why the landing of aliens in Cozy Park seemed to many citizens not so much unexpected as entirely natural. What good can come from Mashmet? Roughly paraphrasing the famous phrase, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" Many Voronezh residents thought in the autumn of 1989, after reading about the landing of armed humanoids in Southern Park. Hot on the trail, artists produced drawings based on children's accounts. The artists were M. Kygrodov and S. Romanov. As usual, the media stirred up the whole affair. "Football with aliens" was the headline of an article published on October 3 in Kommuna, the official newspaper of the Voronezh Regional Committee of the CPSU, after which the world sensation exploded. The article claimed that several schoolchildren, along with another 40 adults, had witnessed a UFO landing on September 27 in a park near the Mashmet bus stop. This is how it happened, the note said. The boys were playing football in the park. The day was approaching evening. At 7:30 p.m., the boys saw a pink glow in the sky, and then a sphere of reddish wine color. The ball, about 10 meters in diameter, hovered at a height of 12 meters above the ground, and the grass beneath it was flattened. Soon the ball flew away. A few minutes later the UFO returned, but there was no spectacular landing. Apparently, the navigation instruments of the miracle craft, which had traveled millions of light years across the vastness of the universe, malfunctioned, and while parking, the saucer struck a poplar tree, which noticeably leaned. Then a 3-meter tall creature emerged from the bottom of the sphere, dressed in a silver jumpsuit and bronze-colored boots, with some kind of disc on its chest and 3 eyes. We will spare you all the details, but the article included other fantastic elements as well. A small robot, a rectangle measuring 3D-57 floating in the air, a nameless boy temporarily paralyzed by the aliens, and the 3-eyed alien had with him a long, 1.5-meter tube gun, which the giant aimed at a passing teenager, as a result of which the boy disappeared. After that, the mysterious ball flew away, and the vanished teenager reappeared. This account of the UFO landing was recorded based on the testimony of several eyewitnesses. The article concluded, "What can add that residents of Poodlin Street repeatedly observed UFO appearances between September 23 and 29. Such a surge of activity is called a flap by ufologists, which is usually associated with UFO landings. TASS is authorized to declare, the naivety of the Voronezh journalists is striking without hesitation. They published ambiguous information in the region's main newspaper, relying on the testimony of 5th graders. Fact-checking, as verification is now called, was clearly lacking. Moreover, the journalists themselves did not even speak to the eyewitnesses of the sensation. The drafts of conversations with the boys were brought to Kommuna by Alexander Mosolov, an enthusiastic researcher of anomalous phenomena. His name appears under the article, Football with Aliens. That note on the last page of the Voronezh newspaper might have remained just a note if the news had not been picked up by TASS, which had a special correspondent in Voronezh. At that time, TASS had the status of the Central Information Agency of the USSR. Through it, the global public learned of the most significant events in the country. The agency was trusted. This is not a joke, not a hoax, not madness, and not an attempt to stimulate local tourism. TASS insists on a visit by aliens to southern Russia, wrote journalists at the New York Times, retelling the Voronezh boys' testimonies to their readers. The note devoted to the Voronezh incident, Back to the UFO, was also published in the Washington Post, where the fact of the UFO landing was questioned, and it was noticed by readers in many large and small media outlets worldwide. Foreign media also attempted to depict the appearance of the aliens as they were seen in Voronezh. Caption with this small note in a Voronezh newspaper, "It all began." Photo. Archive of the newspaper Kommuna. Why are there questions about the evidence? Does humanity today have reason to believe that there really was a meeting between boys and envoys from other worlds in Voronezh Cozy Park? After 30 years, this is more a matter of belief, but many things in this story are at the very least troubling. The author of the sensational article, Football with Aliens, Alexander Mosolov, is not a professional journalist. Moreover, he could hardly be an impartial chronicler of the story. As Alexander told Komsomolskaya Pravda, at the time he worked as an engineer at the Voronezh aircraft factory, although he had been fascinated by UFOs since childhood. Since 1978, he had been studying anomalous phenomena as part of a group of enthusiasts, and he was the first to learn about the anomalous events in Southern Park. Alexander was contacted by the mother of one of the boys who spoke about aliens. Mosolov admits that he did not write the article himself, but gave drafts of his conversations with the boys to journalist Oleg Stolyarov, and the article was published a few days later. All this suggests that no professional journalistic verification of the sensation was carried out before publication. It was written based on the words of 10-year-old eyewitnesses, contained obvious errors of, for example, about 40 adult witnesses. More on that below, and even the date of the incident was incorrect. In fact, according to Mosolov, the football with aliens took place on September 23, not the 27th. In his time, Stierlitz taught that a conversational partner remembers best the last sentence. In the media, however, the opposite rule applies. People easily latch onto the first sensational report, but may not notice subsequent refutations. Meanwhile, refutations soon followed, as early as October 21. The same Kommuna published an article titled "The Phenomenon Requires Understanding," in which journalist Oleg Stolyarov admitted that adults had not seen aliens in Southern Park. Only children had. Later, however, many adults reported flights of glowing balls and flying objects in different parts of the city, but none of them observed aliens in the park. Only one police officer reported an unidentified object landing in the park. All these accounts were collected by Voronezh ufologists in the book UFOs in Voronezh, published in 1990. Swept up in the general UFO euphoria, even Central Television covered the Voronezh miracle and, citing Kommuna, reported the discovery of a mineral of extraterrestrial origin allegedly found in Cozy Park. Alice, this was a classic fake. Kommuna never wrote about any minerals. Soon afterward, Central Television retracted the report about aliens. Many children said they observed aliens in the form of silhouettes from the book UFOs in Voronezh. Drawing by artists M. Kaigorodov and S. Romanov. In the article, "Football with Aliens," children's descriptions of aliens were reduced to a common visual denominator. In fact, surveys of local children conducted by ufologists and journalists indicate that UFOs of various designs landed in Cozy Park almost every day from late September to early October 1989, and the spacecraft were piloted by a wide variety of beings: brown, then green, then in silver jumpsuits, then in blue cloaks. The size of the aliens also varied greatly, from dwarfs to giants. There were even stories in which humanoids descended from their craft to the ground near a poplar tree. And sometimes the children no longer paid much attention to the humanoids. Then we started talking with him, and even forgot about the aliens. We remembered them when the ball was already flying away. Schoolboy Sergei Makarov told reporters. That is, if one believes the Mashmet boys' stories, aliens became a familiar background for them. Even previously unfamiliar schoolchildren involved in the phenomenon formed something like a UFO enthusiasts society, which clearly included the entire student body of two neighboring schools, complained the authors of UFOs in Voronezh. In such a situation, it is extremely difficult to separate truth from fiction and understand whether all the children were inventing stories or whether someone really encountered something unusual. A special commission was created to investigate the phenomenon, headed by Igor Surovtsev, an associate professor at the All-Union State University. The work involved forensic experts, medical examiners, specialists in nuclear physics, chemistry, biology. Data were obtained from radar stations, samples of soil leaves, and grass flattened at the alleged UFO landing site were taken. But after 2 months, Igor Surovtsev delivered a verdict. None of the experts managed to record any anomalies. The park showed only a slightly elevated level of radioactive isotope contamination. But let us not forget that the events took place in Mashmet, and only 3 years had passed since the Chernobyl disaster. Few of those boys are alive today. Today it is not easy to find witnesses willing to confirm that they saw aliens in 1989. One of them, Alexei Panin, admits that his memories of those events are not very clear. I ran home, but I can't really explain it. Somehow they managed to make me see aliens there. That was during the time when journalists arrived. But we saw only silhouettes because the saucer was glowing and they were standing in front of it. The eyewitness recalls. There are other witnesses who, years later, claim that they really did encounter aliens. In an interview with the Discovery Channel, yes, about 20 years ago, a film about the Voronezh phenomenon aired on that channel. The now adult Denis Merzenko confirmed that he saw a very tall man in the park who later disappeared. And Sergei Makarov admits that he still does not doubt the existence of humanoids. I saw them, Sergei says. But sometimes, when I think about it, it all feels like a fairy tale. Alexander Mosilov is convinced that anomalous phenomena really did occur in the park that autumn, but he does not deny that false testimonies distorted the picture beyond recognition. He can speak at length about the unprecedented UFO activity in Voronezh from autumn 1989 to spring 1990. According to the ufologist, we cannot understand the nature of these phenomena, whether it was interference by extraterrestrial civilizations or manifestations of life in parallel worlds. However, he is convinced that the activity of the brothers in mind during those months was connected to preventing a possible disaster at the Voronezh nuclear power plant, located just 30 km from Voronezh Gils, by the way. Is that why the sculpture of Alyonka, which caused such a stir on social media, was sent to Voronezh? Komsomolskaya Pravda also found skeptics back in 1989. Voronezh resident Sergei Gorbachev studied at School No. 33 near Cozy Park in the 1980s. In his class, there were several children who readily gave interviews about their encounters with aliens. Honestly, I didn't believe their stories, even though our local police officer claimed he had seen some kind of flying ball. Sergei told Komsomolskaya Pravda, I personally wasn't interested in these events, although the whole district was on edge. Foreign correspondents came, films were shot, souvenirs were handed out to children chewing gum, pens. Overall, our neighborhood was entertaining. And few of those boys are alive now. Some died from drugs, others from stabbings. Fortunately, I left that area long ago, and it no longer attracts me at all. P.S. A few years ago, Southern Park was finally renovated. Lighting, benches, a children's playground were installed, and paths were laid out. A swimming pool and an Orthodox church were even built here, although a group of civic activists actively opposed the church's construction. The houses in the neighborhood began to look more respectable, but local residents strolling along the familiar childhood paths in the evening still, from time to time, look up at the sky. What if mysterious spheres appear again? A poplar bends under the weight of an alien ship, and once more the big world remembers Voronezh, the Mashmet district and Cozy Park, and the fairy tale returns.